Hi, I'm Katie Wilson and welcome to A News. Here are the headlines. Hamas says it responded positively to the proposed Gaza ceasefire. Trump says Iran's nuclear infrastructure has been completely destroyed. Texas flooding kills 27 people while 20 children remain missing. Hamas has responded positively to a US-mediated ceasefire proposal and expressed its readiness to begin negotiations. Earlier, US President Donald Trump announced that Israel had agreed to the necessary terms for a 60-day ceasefire, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has yet to comment on the statement.
Hamas has responded positively to a US-backed ceasefire proposal and expressed readiness to begin negotiations. The agreement includes the release of hostages and aims to end the ongoing conflict. US President Donald Trump, who initiated the plan, said he expects a response from both sides soon. Hamas confirmed it has completed consultations with other Palestinian factions regarding the latest ceasefire offer. However, concerns remain about the delivery of humanitarian aid, the opening of the Egypt border crossing, and the withdrawal of Israeli troops, with no clear timetable yet established.
We have to get it over with. We have to do something about Gaza. We've been doing it. You know, we're sending a lot of aid, a lot of money and a lot of aid. Otherwise, you'll have people in big, big trouble. But, yeah, I think it's been very positive, a good response. Yes, please.
US President Donald Trump said on Tuesday that Israel has agreed to the necessary terms for a 60-day ceasefire. He added that efforts to resolve the conflict through diplomatic means will continue during this period.
There could be a Gaza deal next week. Yeah.
How optimistic are you?
I'm very optimistic, but, you know, look, it changes from day to day. It's been changing for years. It changes. I came in, I inherited a very bad situation in many ways. And whether it's 25 million people coming in from prisons, jails, from mental institutions, from gangs. You know, it's or that or Gaza. You could say Gaza. You could say I inherited Iran. We did something about it. We've gotten a lot of hostages out, as you know, from Gaza, a lot. But unfortunately, you know, we came into that, we inherited that situation.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has yet to respond to President Trump's statement. The two sides still hold very different positions. Netanyahu insists that Hamas must be fully disarmed. However, Hamas, believed to be holding around 20 hostages, has refused to discuss this issue. Netanyahu is expected to meet President Trump in Washington on July 7th.
The Israeli military says it now holds operational control over 65% of the Gaza Strip, following renewed ground operations since March. According to the Israel Defense Forces, the Air Force has targeted more than 7,500 sites linked to militant groups, including tunnels, rocket launchers and weapons depots. Over the past week, more than 100 militants, including several Hamas commanders, were reportedly killed. Israeli forces say they're continuing operations aimed at protecting civilians and border communities. UN agencies have raised alarm over continuing violence at food distribution points in Gaza, where dozens of Palestinians have been killed or injured whilst trying to access aid. Hospitals in Gaza are overwhelmed with trauma cases, including children shot whilst seeking food. Medical evacuations remain severely limited, despite urgent needs. The UN called for open aid and medical access, but Gaza remains closed to monitors and journalists, hindering verification. The World Health Organization reported many casualties at non-UN food sites amid severe shortages from a prolonged blockade.
Life is almost like is worth one bag of flour or something like that. That's the insane thing what is happening, and it's in a majority of the casualties directly reported to us by the health workers, but also by the families, was all related to this so-called safe non-UN food distribution site. Gaza needs to be flooded by food. So he stopped that scramble from food, from desperate people, for maybe organized people who want to get a hand on the food, etc. The markets need to be flooded, and we saw that also when there was the ceasefire. That very quickly, any looting around everywhere or any violence, it stopped, it subsided.
President Trump has commented on the current state of Iran's nuclear program, stating that Tehran has neither agreed to international inspections nor halted its uranium enrichment activities. According to Trump, Iran's nuclear infrastructure has been completely destroyed, and he believes the country's progress in this field has been permanently set back. The US leader also noted that Iranian officials had expressed a desire to meet with him. However, he warned that without any agreement on enrichment or inspections, such a meeting was unlikely to yield meaningful results. Well, Trump spoke to Putin this week about the situation in Ukraine, and what followed was one of the biggest attacks ever on Kyiv. To help us unpack the situation, we are joined by political scientist Daniela Mello. Thank you for being with us, Daniela. Now, why doesn't Trump appear to be having any success in the peace process between Russia and Ukraine?
Hello, and thank you for having me. I would say, in one word, the answer is commitment. There is an apparent lack of commitment by the Trump administration towards Ukraine. It's been a commitment that has been shaky, volatile, punctuated by multiple moments of explosive discourse between the two leaders. I think we all remember Mr. Zelensky's visit to Washington. And in fact, when the president announces things like that critical weapons delivery to the Ukraine are going to be halted in order to ensure that the United States doesn't draw down its stockpiles, it basically signals to Russia that Russia has an opportunity here, that time is on its side, and does basically creates an incentive for Russia to not negotiate, to not seize a ceasefire, because if you're President Putin and you're looking at a United States that is not fully committed to participating and ensuring the defense and sovereignty of our Ukrainian allies, then as Mr. Putin, you clearly see an opportunity to make battlefield gains and to wait out the United States.
And one of these talking points has been the Kremlin's relationship with Washington and how that's changed under President Trump. To what extent do you think Putin is listening to Trump? And if Putin doesn't listen, what's Trump's plan B?
Well, I would say that Mr. Putin listens to Mr. Trump very attentively and studies his behavior and his patterns and his interests in Ukraine quite carefully. What Mr. Putin realizes is that on one hand, he doesn't want to directly and personally antagonize President Trump, but he has also received multiple signals from the Trump administration that there's some sympathy in Washington to Russia's position vis-a-vis NATO and Ukraine specifically. So Mr. Putin is basically playing a diplomatic dance in which he doesn't want to go so far as to cause Mr. Trump to impulsively act in a way that could hurt the Russians' efforts. But it's very clear that Mr. Trump is not willing to press Russia in brand new ways. And there are still some vehicles, some ways for Trump to pressure Russia. We could talk about allowing Europeans to continue to purchase a lot more Patriot missiles to then be passed on to Ukraine, increasing sanctions on Russia, even though President Trump, to be fair, has sometimes mentioned this. he often ends up backtracking. So it's, again, I come back to my first answer. There's an apparent lack of commitment to the issue of Ukraine, and also an apparent wish to draw down direct support of the United States once the current support, which was approved during the Biden administration, runs out by the end of this summer. What seems clear is that the American administration and certainly the American Congress are unlikely to approve a continuation of those drawdown of weapons paid with American dollars. And unless the Europeans step in with the American agreement that they will buy these weapons instead, Ukraine is actually in a very difficult situation, perhaps one of the most difficult so far in this conflict.
Great to have your insights there. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme.
Thank you.
Well, amid rising geopolitical tensions and escalating climate risks, the European Union is taking steps to build emergency stockpiles of critical minerals and vital infrastructure supplies as part of a broader effort to strengthen crisis preparedness.
The European Union plans to expand emergency stockpiles of critical minerals and essential infrastructure equipment. A draft strategy seen by the Financial Times cites growing geopolitical tensions, climate risks and cyber threats as key drivers. The European Commission warned of growing risks driven by conflict, environmental harm and threats to vital infrastructure such as underwater cables. To boost resilience, the strategy calls on member states to coordinate backup supplies of food, medicine and nuclear fuel. At the EU level, stockpiles of rare earths, permanent magnets and cable repair modules will also be strengthened to ensure rapid recovery from disruptions. The draft, expected to be published next week, follows the EU's Preparedness Union strategy unveiled in March, which urges citizens to store at least 72 hours' worth of essentials and outlines measures to counter natural disasters, cyber attacks and possible military aggression. German defence officials and other EU leaders have recently warned of heightened threats from state-sponsored actors and cyber criminals. The document also highlights the EU's vulnerability to climate change, noting that the region is warming twice as fast as the global average.
As Europe grapples with an intense heatwave, soaring temperatures nearing 40 degrees Celsius are straining construction efforts and exposing the Danube River to unusually low water levels. As the heatwave rages on, the shipping industry in Hungary is forced to deal with losses and operational challenges.
Much of Europe continues to face a heatwave, with temperatures in some areas nearing 40 degrees Celsius. In Bulgaria, construction crews pushed ahead of critical infrastructure work despite the heat, as temperatures peaked at 39 degrees. The team is repairing a major bridge over the Danube River that connects Bulgaria and Romania, and say the extreme conditions present a serious challenge.
The third phase of major repairs to the road section of the Danube Bridge near the city of Ruse is behind us. In short, the repair includes the replacement of the road panels on the roadway for road vehicles, the replacement of the asphalt pavement, the sidewalk blocks and the bridge equipment. The extreme heat is a real challenge for us because we have to work outdoors. The measures we take to protect our workers are primarily providing sufficient amounts of drinking water and water for cooling, providing air-conditioned spaces, more frequent rest intervals during the work process.
Meanwhile, unusually low levels on the Danube River are disrupting shipping, agriculture and local ecosystems. The Danube, Europe's second longest river, serves as a vital transport corridor across the continent. Officials say cargo ships have been forced to leave behind over half of their loads and are operating at just 30 to 40% capacity, a situation that could push shipping costs up by as much as 100%. According to the EU's Copernicus agency, Europe is warming at twice the global average, making it the fastest warming continent. The impact of heat waves on cargo transport and construction illustrates the close connection between climate change and the economy.
Flash floods have devastated parts of Texas, causing widespread destruction and claiming at least 27 lives. Among those still unaccounted for are numerous campers caught in the rising waters along the Guadalupe River.
Months' worth of rain fell in just hours across Texas Hill Country on Friday, triggering catastrophic flash floods that left at least 27 people dead and dozens still missing. The sudden downpour sent rivers surging through communities, washing away homes, camps and vehicles. The Guadalupe River in Kerr County rose rapidly overnight after more than 25 centimetres of rain inundated the region. Among the missing are over 20 girls attending Camp Mystic, a Christian summer camp along the river in the town of Hunt. Emergency teams launched a massive rescue effort as floodwaters engulfed the area. The Texas Department of Public Safety deployed over 100 troopers, high water vehicles, divers, and 7 helicopters with hoist capabilities. The US National Weather Service issued a flash flood emergency for Kerr County after storms dumped a heavy amount of rain on the region northwest of San Antonio.
Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan said the country needs a new constitution. He wants it to reflect today's reality and be chosen by the people. Pashinyan said people should feel the constitution is theirs, made by them for their country. He added that for 35 years, many felt the legal system was forced on them. This should change, and the new constitution should show unity between the state and its citizens. The current constitution was made in 1995 and adapted in 2005 and 2015. It was in 2015 that Armenia moved from a semi-presidential to a parliamentary system. The Armenian Justice Minister said a draft could be ready in 10 months. Armenia's Prosecutor General has formally requested parliamentary approval to initiate criminal proceedings against 2 opposition members of parliament. The motions were presented to MPs on Friday. The case involves 2 opposition MPs, former Defence Minister Seyran Ohanyan and former Environment Minister Artsvik Minasyan. Ohanyan is accused of illegally taking land and building a house whilst he was Defence Minister. He faces charges of abuse of power and money laundering. Meanwhile, Minasyan is accused of helping Ohanyan get the land illegally and misusing his official powers. The EU Council of Foreign Ministers is set to revisit the issue of Georgia on the 15th of July. According to the agenda published on the European Council official website, ministers will exchange views on the situation in Georgia. The matter was also discussed at the June meeting, though no definitive decisions were reached. Kaja Kallas, the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, noted that the discussions revolved around the possibility of imposing sanctions, but no consensus was achieved. Kallas confirmed that the European Council will return to the topic of Georgia in July. Uzbekistan is stepping up its efforts to boost trade logistics by launching its own ferries in the Caspian Sea. The move, announced by the Transport Minister, is aimed at reducing cargo delays and strengthening regional connectivity.
Uzbekistan will operate its own ferries in the Caspian Sea to ease bottlenecks and accelerate foreign trade shipments. Transport Minister Ilhom Makamov announced the decision, noting that cargo ships can currently be delayed for up to 40 days. Uzbek and Turkish companies will jointly manage the new ferry services. Makamov emphasised the importance of President Shavkat Mirziyoyev's recent visit to Azerbaijan, which led to extended tariff discounts of up to 70% on container rail transport via Azerbaijan, now valid until the end of 2026. He also highlighted the strategic role of the Middle Corridor, which runs through Azerbaijan, as a vital route for Uzbek exports and imports. Further cooperation between Baku and Tashkent includes plans for joint logistics companies, port infrastructure development and ferry production, with a proposed $150 million investment. This aligns with broader regional efforts, including the China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan railway project, set to significantly increase transit volumes and strengthen connectivity across Central Asia and the Caspian region. In August 2023, President Ilham Aliyev proposed maritime cooperation with Uzbekistan, including joint activity in the Black Sea. A month later, plans were reported for joint ferry production between the 2 countries, with a projected cost of $150 million. Back in July, Uzbekistan also announced plans to build and lease maritime terminals and warehouses in Georgian ports.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the Zangezur corridor would offer new opportunities not only for Azerbaijan but for the wider region. He noted that the corridor holds strategic importance for the Middle Corridor route. Turkish goods will reach Central Asia and China more quickly via the Caspian Sea, whilst cargo from Europe to China will travel through Turkey. Erdogan highlighted that the corridor includes a railway line, increasing its value for international freight transport. He also mentioned that President Aliyev and Iraq both support the project, adding that the planned railway from Idar to Nakhchivan will be a key step for cargo transportation. American financial institutions are ready to fund Turkey's nuclear energy ambitions, particularly in small modular reactor technology. At a nuclear summit in Istanbul, US State Department advisor Justin Friedman emphasized Washington's strong support for Turkey's leadership potential in the nuclear sector as both countries expand their strategic energy partnership.
The United States is ready to finance Turkey's future nuclear energy projects, especially small modular reactors. At the 11th Nuclear Power Plant Summit in Istanbul, US nuclear energy advisor Justin Friedman said American institutions are just waiting for viable projects.
The U.S. has always wanted to be Turkey's long-term partner, and as someone who worked in Turkey 10 years ago as political counselor at our embassy, I know that has been our long-term goal. So nuclear is a piece of that, and we're hoping that by working together on the nuclear energy issue, we can extend and grow our partnership.
The US International Development Finance Corporation and Exim Bank have already pledged over $17 billion globally, and now they're eyeing Turkey. Friedman noted Turkey's 20-gigawatt nuclear target and called the country's approach clear and determined. He praised Turkish industrial interest and potential, having met with several companies now exploring nuclear supply chain roles and energy self-sufficiency.
We have been working with the government here to share our understandings and exchange best practices to help Turkey develop the rules that will enable that leadership to happen. And so I think when we get down to it, it's that clear rules of the road and ambition will come together here in Turkey, and Turkey will be a leader.
The US and Turkey are also working together on nuclear regulation development and joint ventures. Friedman called collaboration in small modular reactors technology between US and Turkish companies natural and organic, as Turkish firms already contribute parts and services to international nuclear projects. Friedman also welcomed the World Bank's decision to lift its ban on nuclear funding, calling it a strong signal to private investors. He ended on an optimistic note about future cooperation. "I hope there will be an agreement soon," he said, "and I'd like to be part of the team developing it." The remarks come as the US significantly expands its own nuclear ambitions. Under President Donald Trump's energy roadmap, Washington aims to quadruple its nuclear capacity from 100 to 400 gigawatts by 2050.
Well, that's all we have for now from Baku. Stay tuned to A News for more updates and have a wonderful evening.